Hi, everyone. It's Amy Valdivia, and this is the Divorce Podcast from the Divorce Lending Association. I am very happy today because we have an attorney who has a completely different approach than most, and he has a great story how he got here. I have Ty Supancic from the Law Collaborative in LA, California. Welcome. Yay!
Hello, Amy. Thank you for having me.
Well, I want to jump right in because I want everybody to hear this. You started out in Hollywood.
Yes.
What a story. You went from talent to the movies to dealing with all the superstars to family law.
Yeah, I figure if I'd have grown up in Chicago, I'd have started off in cars. Not Chicago, Detroit. I'd have started off in cars. Yeah, how big a car guy I am. But yeah, growing up in Los Angeles, everyone's in the entertainment business. Yeah, I was in the entertainment business for many years, and my father was a family law attorney for 52.
And you decided
I went to work for the family business. Yeah.
what was it in the entertainment business that drew you there and then realized I need to go family law? Tell me that journey. It's such a different place.
It's funny. It's my father's journey, really. My father wanted to be a film director and went to film school. And Robert Altman was directing. He was like a guest professor there, and he was complaining about these GD lawyers. GD lawyers are ruining Hollywood. GD lawyers are running Hollywood. It's all about the lawyers. And my dad had a kid already, and was scared about his prospects in film school. So finished film school and then enrolled in law school and thought that he would get into entertainment through the back door, through being a lawyer. And as a new associate at a law firm, they give the new associate all the cases that none of the other lawyers want, and that was family law. And so my father started doing family law and just kept doing family law, did family law his whole career.
And so definitely had to follow in his footsteps, do exactly.
Yes.
Tell me what's the greatest difference in the entertainment law versus the family law that you're dealing with? Because you're dealing with drama in family law.
Yeah, you're dealing with drama. You may have fewer personality disorders in family law, but maybe not, because maybe the reason that they're forced into a divorce is because maybe someone is dealing with a personality disorder.
Right.
Yeah.
It's definitely a movie that you're filming, right?
Yes. Yes.
Well, okay, now let's go back even further because I know your dad is a great influence to your career. And I'd like the listeners to hear because I want them to hear some background, number one. But number two, they need to understand that we in the family law professional area, whatever we do, whatever service we provide, we're still humans. We have a life and we have a history. And our family is rich in, shall we say, the way they impact us. And we really have reasons for going in the direction we did. Tell me your dad's story.
So I guess my dad's story starts with his dad's story. When my grandfather was a little kid, his father took him and his brother aside, so there was three kids, a sister, a brother, and my grandfather, and said, "We're going to court tomorrow, and you're going to tell the judge you want to live with me, or I'll kill the three of you." They went to court. They never saw their mother again.
How old was he?
I don't know. He was little.
Okay.
He was little. The older brother and sister got away. They went to live with family, or I think the older brother joined the Navy early. And then one day, my great grandfather died, and my grandfather was alone in the house with the corpse and was scared and crawled under the porch and lived under the porch and would go down to the grocery store and get groceries on a tab. And after a certain amount of time, the grocer was like, you have to pay the bill. Where's your father? Oh, my father's dead. And so That was my grandfather's divorce story. When my father was 8, his mother took the whole family from Long Beach, which is where he was born, to Seattle, and sat my father down in the kitchen and said, "You're going to be my little man from now on. We're not going back to your father." That's called emotional incest. That's not appropriate. But that was my father's divorce story. I grew up hearing all sorts of horrible things about my grandfather, conflicting things. My grandmother would tell us one story, my father would tell us another story, because my father was the only sibling. He had 7 brothers and sisters. He's the only kid that took my grandfather's name back, Supancic.
Oh.
The other kids kept stepfather's name. And my father reconciled with my grandfather in college. So I would hear one thing from my father about my grandfather, something else from my aunts and uncles, something else entirely from my grandmother. And then after 35 years of divorced, she remarried the guy. And our minds were blown because the conflicting stories we'd all heard, if any of them were true, she was crazy. And the truth is truth is subjective. And what she told one person for dramatic effect, so she ended up remarrying the guy. He ended up being a great re-addition to the family, but she really poisoned the well because of the stories that she told. So when I work with couples, and I almost only work with couples in divorce, one of my earliest conversations with them is that they need to have a united, empowering divorce story. A friend of mine in Catholic school had an exercise where the teacher said, you're gonna write your obituary. And the idea behind this was that if you wrote your own obituary, you'd make it glowing and wonderful, and maybe you would act that way. Maybe you would fulfill the things that you would want people to say about you when you were gone. We can do that with divorce. History is written by the victors. In a consensual divorce, in a mediated divorce, in a collaborative divorce, the couple can come together and write a story about what happened that's empowering, that's loving, that doesn't blame anyone, that absolves the children, that ends up being a blessing to their family, but only if they collaborate on it, because it's got to be one story.
Right.
One parent can't tell a different story. If children identify subconsciously as half each of their parents. And if the story they hear from an aunt or an uncle, or God forbid, a parent, is blaming or negative in some way about, that person was a bum or deceitful or lied, or the child internalizes that. That becomes part of their psyche. They bring that to their future relationships. Mm-hmm. How my father was married for almost 60 years, having had 2 divorces before him, is remarkable.
Wow. Yeah.
But none of his kids survived. All 4 of my father's children had a divorce, including myself, which his law firm handled. And it was a lovely divorce. It was a mediated divorce. It was as good as a divorce can get. It was the best divorce. But even I made mistakes because things I didn't know, things I didn't understand. And so I bring that to bear when I work with families, helping them lovingly reorganize.
This is so interesting. So when we opened, we talked about the fact that you were in the entertainment field. That's where you practiced. It is obvious in your approach how that field influenced divorce in your world today, because it's about the story, right? It's about writing the movie. It's the script.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Really putting it on paper. Now, I have to ask, where did you go to school?
I went to school in the West Valley. I went to Pierce College, which is a community college. I got an AA, and then I went to work in entertainment. I was a personal manager. Before that, first I was a talent agent. First I was a photographer. Then I was a videographer. Then I was a agent. Then I was a personal manager and a producer. Then I went back into video editing, and I was an Avid editor. And at the time, Avid was the gold standard for editing software. And the person I was working with wanted to switch to Final Cut Pro because it was cheaper. And I was unwilling to learn a new system to make an ugly end product. And I called my father up and I said, do they still have that program where you can read the law? California is one of 7 states where you can still become a lawyer like Lincoln and Jefferson, which is apprenticing yourself to a lawyer or a judge. And my father said, yep, they still do that. I said, I want to do it. So it's called the Law Office Study Program. I think it used to be called the Law Office or Judges Chambers Study Program. It's not promoted by the bar. When I did it, I think it cost $25 twice a year to do.
Wow.
You have to apply, you have to be accepted. Both of my sisters applied. Both of them were rejected like I was the first 3 times we applied. So they don't want you to do the Law Office Study Program. They just keep rejecting your application. But the 3 of us all tried 3 times. We all got admitted on our 3rd application to the program. They offer no guidance. It's just up to you and your lawyer. You have a supervising lawyer. I think one of the Kardashians was doing this recently, and it was briefly a news story. I don't think she's doing it any longer. I don't see how she was doing it legally because you have to be supervised by a lawyer. I think it's 35 hours a week. And she had lawyers flying in to visit her, if I remember the news story. And that's not 35 hours of supervised work per week. So anyway, you have to pass the baby bar. If you pass the baby bar, they give you credit for 1 year of law study. You keep studying for 3 more years. You keep applying you keep sending in your $25 and your report on the cases you briefed and the tests you took and what you studied. And at the end, they count on you not passing the bar exam.
So they say, yeah, you can if you want to. However,
yes.
And then you take the bar just like everybody else.
Yeah. And the pass rate is about 2% for this program. Okay. I've never met in person anyone else who's done it. I've spoken to 2 people on the phone who did it. I tracked people down and they said, yeah, go for it. But I've never met anyone in person who's done it.
Self-study, self-paced.
Yes. Yeah.
And what a testimony to your work ethic.
Or my ignorance.
Well, hey, it can be bliss to some people. But that also, to me, is a testimony to that logo on your shoulder, the Law Collaborative. Number 1, collaborative is the buzzword these days. And you've done this for quite a long time. And then on your other shoulder, the best divorce. You definitely don't do the norm. You don't follow the trends. You definitely do things your own way. You may even be ahead of the trends. Tell me, collaborative. What made you decide collaborative was your path?
So in the 80s, there was a horrible backlog in the courtrooms. It was a real crisis. My father, with some other lawyers, went to the supervising judge, I believe in Santa Monica, and said, we want to start a judge pro tem program where lawyers volunteer to be judges to help with some of this backlog. They now have a judge pro tem program, by the way. At the time, they didn't. The supervising judge said, no, but I will start a mediation program where lawyers can mediate. There's no power for a mediator. Mediator's not making decisions like a judge pro tem would be. Right. My father said, what's mediation? That program is now mandatory in every court in the state of California. You cannot see a judge in the state of California about children without first going through their mediation program. And that was started back in the 80s. It was wildly successful because a lot of times that's what it takes to settle issues. When 2 parents love their kids and neither one of them is abusing substances or has a real personality issue, they love their kids and they want what's best for their kids. And sometimes it just takes a third neutral party to help them reach an agreement about their kids. In 1996, my father heard about another model, which was the collaborative law model. It was invented by a guy named Stu Wedd in the Midwest. And it was a model that was, my father said it was like mediation on steroids. Because The lawyers don't go to court, but you've got two lawyers instead of one neutral mediator. Both parties have a lawyer. Both lawyers have the same duty to zealously advocate for their client as any other lawyer. But the lawyers and the parties sign a court order that the judge signs that says, in effect, if I'm not a skillful enough lawyer to resolve this matter outside of court, I'm fired and all my work goes in the toilet.
Yeah.
So have you heard the saying that when all you have is a hammer, when all you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail?
Yes.
The hammer for lawyers is, let's just go to court. I'll make 7 to 10 grand. You'll make 7 to 10 grand. And the judge will tell our clients what we're afraid to tell them, because if we tell them that, they'll fire us. That's a horrible
model.
Horrible model. But that's what litigation is. It's about managing client expectations.
7 to 10 grand was a pretty light number, but we'll go with that.
Well, I'm sorry, just one hearing.
One visit, yeah.
Yeah. One hearing. Oh yeah, no. One day at trial, $100,000.
Right.
The recently retired supervising judge in Los Angeles said that in his exiting remarks. One day at trial is $100,000 now. Once you get in all the trial prep, once you get in everything that's required to make it to trial at the end, a 3-day trial, pretty average, $300,000. That's why 98% of the cases settle on the courthouse steps. The clients run out of money, and the lawyers say, "I'm not litigating anymore." So you guys got to settle it.
Okay, so you just hit the nail on the head. Settle versus collab.
Yeah. Well, so in the collaborative law model, let's see. So most cases, mediation's great. Just like many medical procedures. Simple country doctor, fine. Nurse practitioner, great. In the Midwest, you got nurse practitioners doing all sorts of stuff that they can't do in California, and it's fine. But if I'm having open heart surgery, I want a room full of people.
The professional.
Yeah, and that's kind of the difference between mediation and collaborative law. Most cases with one mediator, you can settle the entire case. Sometimes you need to bring in a neutral. I do a lot of co-mediation. I do a lot of co-mediation with either mental health professionals, because you got a case where there's a lot of emotional issues going on, or I'll co-mediate with a neutral financial, because there's complex financial issues involved. I also do three-party co-mediation, where it's me, a lawyer, a mental health professional, and a financial expert. I do a lot of that. But that's overkill for many cases. But then when you have the case where there's subterfuge, or maybe lying, or a huge difference in someone's understanding, or their ability to focus on numbers, maybe the collaborative law model is amazing, and it resolves cases that otherwise couldn't resolve and would require court, because you have the two lawyers, they're looking out for their clients. You bring in a joint neutral forensic financial who has a fiduciary duty to both parties. They take all of the financial information and they render a report. If there are children, you bring in one joint neutral child parenting plan expert, and they address those issues as a neutral. Both parties have mental health professionals serving as coaches to help manage their emotional issues, so that you can get through the meeting without someone dropping a bomb or running out of the room. And yeah, it's a lot of professionals, and it's really robust, and it's really efficient. When the doctor is not searching around on the tray for the next instrument, the surgery is going to go quicker.
True.
When you got one person handling anesthesia, the surgery is going to go quicker, and the anesthesia is going to be administered better. So it's like that, and it's overkill sometimes. But spending $80,000 for a collaborative law case all in versus $300,000 for a 3-day trial.
Cheap.
Yeah.
Compared to it, yeah, and listening to you talk about the reports, that's one of the things that we find ourselves as CDLPs doing. We generate those reports because usually the home is one of the greatest assets in their portfolio.
It's usually the biggest asset and the one with the most emotional attachments to it, which
I
leads to
often,
irrational
yeah,
decisions.
absolutely. I talk about that all the time. The Christmas tree doesn't have to sit in that window forever. There are other windows, there are other homes, there are other doors. It doesn't always have to be that particular home. However, there are many times where there's hope, because if you have both attorneys actually negotiating, right, and talking and meeting, the meeting of the mind, saying, hey, there's an option here. Let's worry about support, or let's get those temporary orders in place, things like that. All of a sudden we have a solution, and one parent can stay, or maybe there's a nesting home and all that kind of stuff. And I found it's so interesting in the collaborative cases where they say, give me your options. And it's a matter of, okay, here's my report, and they marry them with everybody else's reports to come up with the best solution.
Yeah.
So that's how you came up with the best divorce.
Okay, so backtrack. So my father was really enamored of collaborative law. Thought that was going to be the only thing that people would do in the future. Thought it was better than mediation because both parties have lawyers representing them. I guess he was kind of blind to the cost, because it does cost a lot more than mediation. I settle most of my mediated cases for under 10 grand. And a collaborative law case, it's closer to 100 grand once you get in all the professionals and stuff. So he thought everything was going to be collaborative law, but he kept litigating because that's the bread and butter, and that's what most people expect. I still get told by people, well, a judge has to make that decision. And I say, no, a judge only has to sign at the end that you're single.
Right.
Everything else you can decide on. Well, I think a judge should decide that. Okay, you have the money to spend on that, and you want to have the lawyers throwing pasta at each other to see what sticks so they can destroy your family. I mean, anyway, so my father kept litigating. He also did collaborative. He also did mediation. At a certain point, well, I can tell you, in 2018, I decided I can't go to court anymore. My mediated clients are getting a lawyer that's too aggressive and combative, and my litigated clients are getting a lawyer that's too peace focused. I'm not serving anybody, and it's killing me. So I said to my father, I can't go to court anymore. And he said, okay, I respect that. But we wore suits, and someone would come into the office and they'd have a court hearing on calendar and they'd need a consultation. And he'd say, just meet with this person. And I'd say, it's a court hearing. Just meet with this person, Ty. So I started wearing a Hawaiian shirt to the office. They say, dress for the job you want. People would come in. My father would poke his head in my office. They can't meet with Ty. He's not wearing a suit today. He kept litigating. I stopped litigating. That's how I got out of it, which is very hard for lawyers to do. I had the luxury of my father continuing to litigate, so we were still a full service law firm. We don't do any litigation. I don't do any litigation anymore. The firm doesn't do any litigation. The firm is me. I don't do any litigation anymore. The best divorce came from my father always saying that he used to say, divorce is like a death. And I think he got that from therapists. Divorce is like a death. Well, I've been through a divorce. It's horrible. It's upsetting, but there's no death involved, especially if there's a kid, because you're still dealing with the other parent forever. I mean, my daughter's 27. I still have, dealings with my co-parent. So I thought death was and I argued with him. It's not like a death, Bob. He was never divorced. Well, it's like being a phoenix. A phoenix, and there's a great ball of fire, and then the phoenix is reborn at the end of the process, beautiful and whole and restored. Okay, except that the phoenix destroys everything around it in a ball of fire, And at the end of the process, it's just a phoenix again, with the same potential to destroy everything around it in another ball of fire. I said, wouldn't it be better if it was more like a reluctant caterpillar who maybe doesn't want this to happen, but it's time for this to happen? And maybe the reluctant caterpillar can crawl into a cocoon that is the process we provide them and the technology and the protocols that we give them. And if they go through that process and accept that process, they can emerge on the other side a butterfly, something better than they were before, more able to co-parent, more able to manage conflict, better communication skills, really have it be an opportunity for growth and evolution. I like that.
That sounds great.
And so came up with this logo to represent that. And his logo is, was fire and the scales of justice and the,
Yes. And
the dove of peace. Yeah.
Wow. I have never heard an attorney or anyone in our profession compare divorce to the caterpillar. But you don't have any entertainment in your background at all. I don't see that at all. Boy, oh boy. That's amazing. Well, for those individuals that walk into your office and they say, this is my path. Take me to butterfly future. What do you tell them? What's the heads up? What's that key bit of advice that you give them as they're about to embark on this divorce journey?
The first thing I ask them, if it's one person that contacts me, because often it's two, when it's one person that contacts me, I say, does your spouse know this is coming? If they do, I say, listen, I believe your best path forward is going to be a consensual process where you don't involve lawyers in the court in an adversarial way. The best opportunity to get on that path is to come back with your spouse. Let me speak to the both of you for 2 hours or for an hour. So you get all of the same information. You hear all of your options. I'll explain the process. I'll walk you through the steps. I'll answer all your questions. And that way you are on the same page. Because if I spend any significant time talking to one of you, the other's not going to trust me.
Right.
The other's going to feel like I'm not neutral. You've got too much information. Now they need to get their own person advising them. That's if the person says, yes, my spouse is expecting this. We've discussed this. If they say no, I say, do you want a divorce? I don't know. Well, have either of you used the D word? No. Can I suggest that you don't? Can I suggest that you postpone it? Because it's a really hard word to walk back. Once someone has said the D word, it's hard to get off that path. You can delay it. You can put it off. But now someone is thinking that, and that's a fear, and they start entertaining that, and they start maybe planning a little bit for that, and they start looking at what their life might be like. And it's not accurate. It's fantasy. They have no idea what their life is going to look like. They just know it'll be different.
Right.
So therapists now have something called discernment counseling. It's a relatively newer process. It helps couples figure out what path is best for them. It's not marriage counseling. It's discernment counseling. Do we get divorced? Do we work on this? Because therapists say they believe most marriages could be saved if people are willing to talk. If people are willing to communicate and work on their issues, most therapists think most marriages, not when you have a diagnosed narcissist, not when you have a diagnosed, when someone is actively drinking and they're not going to get in recovery, that's tough. But with two, normally functioning people, if they just talk about what the problem is, they could probably fix it if they wanted to. But what happens is people run out of energy. They lose hope. One of them makes up their mind, and then it's done. Then that's what's going to happen. Um,
Go ahead.
no,
Sorry.
no, no, no.
I was going to say, I've heard you talk about this whole approach, including a team, multiple individuals that you
Yeah.
talk to me about that. How important is that, having the right team in place, the multiple individuals, when you're advising these couples, or even this one particular person that walks in the door the first day? Where do you bring that into the conversation?
Where it comes up.
Okay.
I'm not an accountant. I'm not a lending professional. I am not a real estate professional. I am not a mental health professional. I'm a lawyer, and I have some vocabulary, and I have some understanding, and I know my way around what would happen, if the parties went to court. But I am not an expert in those very discrete, very particular, very important areas. And so when the conversation turns to that, if the clients don't have an answer, and sometimes they do, which is great, if they don't have an answer, it's an opportunity to say, well, why don't we bring in a certified divorce lending professional? Because that person has really specific training, that person has a really specific understanding, and that person has solutions and ideas that would never occur to us because we don't know what's happening. And I know that the lending market changes all the time. I just heard that there are new programs now
Yes.
that weren't there before that might make a maneuver or an agreement around a real estate possible when it wasn't in the past. And the same thing happens in every field. And so it's really important to not stumble blindly and hope that you'll come up with something when you don't know what all of your options are. And that's what's important, I think.
And then all of a sudden, how many years later does grandma remarry grandpa?
Right, 35 years later.
Right. Maybe we could have avoided a few things 35 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Well, I got to tell you, I'm loving this interview, and I want to hear one more thing before I let you go. Tell me about, as much as you can, the case that completely impacted the way you do business today.
Well, I mean, my own divorce, the fact that it was a mediated divorce, the fact that we never spoke ill of each other, the fact that we really had a great divorce, except I felt wronged, and I would not sit next to my ex in a auditorium. And I didn't know, because I, at that time, was not a divorce professional, that when a child has to choose, when they get their diploma and they have to pick, do I go right to hug mom first, or do I go left to hug dad first? That's a horrible, horrible position to put. I had no idea. I was oblivious to it. You need to sit next to your co-parent. You need to suck it up and sit next to your co-parent. Little things. I use this example. We weren't aware that using the children as a messenger or a courier is a huge problem.
Right.
Putting a check in your kid's backpack for a field trip so that the other parent gets the check out of the backpack. Huge no-no. You're making the child responsible for adult communications. No idea, oblivious to it, never even thought about it until I was in a co-mediation with a therapist, and a therapist brought that. For years I knew, you don't want to use, you don't say to a kid, ask the other parent, ask your dad if we can go to Disneyland. Clearly, obviously that's a mistake.
Right.
Throwing the other parent under a bus in that respect. But slipping a check in a backpack, that seems harmless, but no, it's not. And there's so many things like that,
right,
that affect my practice.
And you commented on that earlier. You made the statement that people don't realize how their life really will change It's a little bit of a fantasy land that they're living in, but they don't realize there's that moment where they have to sit in the high school graduation, and now all of a sudden you've got the ex and you've got their potential new partner two seats away. And this could be your child's greatest day. And you could ruin it for them because you can't sit in the same row.
Yeah. Or parents who are complaining about their current co-parents' parenting style. Right. And I have to say, how do you think it's going to change when they're alone with that parent? Because they're probably going to get 50-50 custody. If they're able to exercise it, the judge is going to give them 50-50. And then they have to fail at it. And not fail at co-parenting, fail at exercising 50-50 custody. Because parenting styles, yeah, parenting styles are, it's co-parenting is a real, I mean, the real miasma. It's a swamp when you have issues with your co-parent's style of co-parenting, and then you decide that ending the marriage is going to fix that. No, now you are abandoning the children to that co-parent's parenting style.
And people, I think, forget that co-parenting is very different than custody.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very different.
Yeah.
And the influence that you have or not on your child and how your family will look over the course of the next 1 year, 5 years, 20 years, and how their marriages may or may not be impacted. People don't think about that whole picture.
Yeah.
And I think that is a blessing that we do see in the collaborative arena, because so many people are involved, because there are therapists, there are those individuals that say, hey, let me help you through this. Let's get through the emotions. Let's make everybody whole as much as we possibly can when they're walking away from this.
Yeah. When I used to litigate, you sit there in the courtroom all day long watching the other cases. And there was a case where one parent was absolutely determined that the children were going to be raised vegetarian. And they were certain that the judge would agree with them that this was best for the kids. And this person brought a doctor in to testify that this was what was best for the kids. And they were horrified and disappointed and much had much less money at the end of the day when the judge said, I don't care what the kids eat when they're with the other parent. They get at McDonald's every day, 3 meals a day. I don't care. That's a parenting style. Kids can be vegetarian with you. They can eat anything they want when they're with the other parent. And the person was just, bowled over. But that's what happens when you go to court.
That's amazing. Well, this has just been an amazing time with you. And I want people to know where to find you. How, first and foremost, boy, we didn't even talk about this. How do you practice? Is it always in person? Can they work with you online?
I'm 100% Zoom.
Oh, wonderful.
I'm all remote.
California?
All over the state of California, yeah.
No other states?
Correct.
How can a Californian who is getting ready to embark on this journey find you?
They can go to my website, thelawcollaborative.com. They can send an email there. My email is Ty, T-Y, at thelawcollaborative.com. I think if you click the link on contact us, it goes to info, which also goes to me. Or they can call the number. It's on the website.
Any last parting thoughts?
I'm so pleased. I'm so thankful to have met you, that this CDLP exists, because I think it's at least it's newer to me, that this designation exists, that more and more professionals are understanding that the divorce arena is different from other arenas. And now you have realtors who are getting specialized, and you have CDFA, certified divorce financial analysts, financial advisors who are getting special designations, that people are taking the time to delve into the intricacies and the vagaries of the divorce arena so that they can better serve their clients, and that they care about their clients. And I'm so thankful to have you as a resource, and that people have this organization as a resource. It's a game changer. My father would have been thrilled.
Oh, we're just gonna make you our commercial. We're just gonna cut that out and just put that on the website, our commercial.
I would have dressed up if I knew that was going to be the case.
Oh no, it's the client shirt. That's your thing. And that is why people would come to you for the best divorce at the Law Collaborative. I appreciate your time. This was amazing. And I knew when I contacted you, you have to be a guest because you do things so differently. And so I'm grateful for you, because people need to hear this message. Life does change, and it doesn't have to be all that bad, but you got to think about all of it. It's a whole process and a whole procedure. So thank you so very much for your time. Truly, truly appreciate it. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you, Amy.